Hello and welcome. Today I am joined by Dr. Eddie Craghill, who is a GP and sports doctor. So Eddie, thank you for joining.
No problem. Good morning, Andy.
Yeah, how's things going today so far?
Yeah, very well. Sun's not quite out, but we can't have everything, so we won't complain.
Yeah, no, it's good. A digger's just started outside, so hopefully you can't hear it too much and it's not going to interfere with what we're chatting about today.
No, nothing from my end.
Glad to hear it. So where are you from originally, Eddie?
So I'm originally from Widnes, which for those that don't know is in between Liverpool and Manchester. So you get a very tribal following depending on which side of the fence that you fall onto.
Yeah, no, I'm from Southport, so I know the areas of the northwest west pretty well. So like a Widnes, are they because the rugby league is quite big there, isn't it, as well? Like what would you say? Is it still football being the main sport there?
It certainly was historically very, very rugby league, to the point that I don't remember having football lessons in school, for instance, because it was all rugby, rugby, rugby. I've sort of dabbled in both in terms of various teams and both as a doctor professionally and as a player in my younger days. Yeah, I would say it's certainly historically rugby league, but I think football probably is the main sport there now. I don't think I'd be out of turn saying that.
Yeah, no, probably
Widnes
right.
sadly had a little bit of a decline compared to when they were the world champions back in, I think it was 1990.
Yeah, no, I remember we were a football school, but then when you play against, we'd play rugby, and it was like, yeah, they're a different breed of athletes, which I think translates into professional game as well. Definitely quite robust people, aren't they, in rugby?
Yeah, absolutely, and it's a very physical game, and there are things to be celebrated about that, and but it's not for everyone.
Yeah, so in terms of getting involved in this area of like sports medicine or medicine in general, like, how did that start for you?
In terms of medicine itself, it's just something that I guess it's a bit cliched, but I've always enjoyed that side of things. I enjoy the challenge and the problem solving aspect to it. And then there's the people and the relationships that you build, which is probably why I've gravitated towards environments where there's been heavy follow up in terms of GP. And you get to follow people and families through time and all the various things that crop up with that. And then how that translates into team sports as well, and being in an environment that you are with them on a weekly X amount of times per weekly basis, and get to get knowledge of their day-to-days, how they operate, and then hopefully that allows you to translate that into providing medical care that enhances their performance in or health in some way.
And then, so for that, then, so are you planning that, right? I want to do medicine then. So how do you plan what you want to do at A levels or so on around that?
Yeah, I think at that stage, I was thinking of medicine when I was kind of making choices for GCSEs, for A levels, that side of things. Very much wasn't thinking further ahead than that at that stage. It was just let's try and get into medicine and see what that comes from there. I wasn't one of these people who said, well, if that doesn't work out, I'll do this or I'll do that. It was like, right, that's what I'm going to do, so I'm going to go for it. At that time, I wasn't one of the people who, in terms of my school, my peer group, it wasn't where lots of people going off to medicine. You do have environments where there are multiple people in a year group trying to do that. That wasn't the situation that I found myself in. But it enabled me to I suppose challenge myself and go for that. And touch wood, it all worked out in the end.
So then once you decided that once you're doing your A levels, what point did you think, right, okay, yeah, this is what I want to do? And you pick, it was Liverpool, wasn't it, you went to?
It was, yeah. I mean, I think with medicine, it's one of these things that you can do lots of different things with it. So I think because of that, it means that you aren't putting yourself into a box by saying that you want to do medicine, because there are various things you can do both clinically and non-clinically after getting that qualification. But I think when you get to university, you start to see all the kind of avenues that that open up in relation to that. And you also find there are some people that having tried it and experienced it, they feel that that's not for them. And that's obviously very valid choice. I had housemates who did 1 year of medicine, decided it wasn't for her, and then went off and did accountancy. It would seem something chalk and cheese, but that was what was the better option for her. And I think that's it's really important that people can have insight and not blindly tread down a path that isn't correct for them.
Yeah. Do you have any, like, what were your thoughts when you were doing the course? Was there any points when you thought maybe this wasn't for you?
I think there were. I think it depends on your personality type. At Liverpool at the time, they did what was called a PBL, or a problem-based learning course, which meant that you had to go from the style of teaching that certainly back when I was doing it at college, at school, was very much right. This is what you got to learn. Go away, do that, and we'll teach you it. We'll do lectures, we'll do talks, and that's what we'll focus on. Whereas problem-based learning was more about, right, this is the topic. You go away and you kind of set your objectives around that, and you had to be very much self-directed, which I found quite challenging. It's something I've got better at with practice, and I think that actually having been through that experience, that's helped me later on with various educational milestones, because then I've known that how to kind of go about looking into something more independently.
So yeah, just explain a bit more about that then. So like, how do you think that's helped?
Because when you then have things in terms of whether that be projects, research projects, or whether it be something like going for an examination, a qualification, actually not been too focused on the actual curriculum, but more on what you need to get out of that, and looking at actually what this is trying to teach you or trying to get you to demonstrate, rather than looking at these are the bits of knowledge that I need to know, I think is more useful. And I think that that's what enables you to retain that information as well. If you're not simply learning verbatim a rule or a fact, but actually you're learning why this happens, or what the solution to that is, and that approach is hopefully something that then enables you to have a better understanding and grasp of the topic, whatever that may be.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So, saying before that, I've just had a conversation with Lee Harrington and Mike Carroll at Salford Uni, and we were talking about that they're putting together a new centre there, and what we see in the market is that demand and desire for real RCT clinical evidence. Not that it's diminishing, but in terms of practical implementation in clinical environments, people want faster, more easy to understand, consumable feedback on case studies or things, rather than it being, all right, we've got this RCT of X number of people in there. They want something a bit more practical based, which is not exactly the same as what you're talking about, but we're seeing a lot more of that in the market, where the people are looking at, this shorter, sharper thing of case study information, rather than it being, and practical information, rather than it being really as evidence based.
No, absolutely, and I think there's an element of that in terms of the generation that we're in, and the accessibility on iPhones, of just being able to pick up something and ask for a piece of information and it being there. But medicine, and I guess life to a broader extent, isn't always that easily broken down. And there are complexities and there are shades of grey within there that still need exploration. So I think it's important that people consider those.
Yeah, no, for sure. So when you were at university then, so at what point did you start formulating what you wanted to go into when you were working?
I always had the interest within the general practice side of things. I enjoyed the hospital environment. I realised quite early on that I wasn't a surgeon, on the basis that surgeons absolutely love surgery. I think that's true for absolutely all of them that I'd met, and it would be the absolute highlight of their day to get into an operating theatre and be part of the procedure, or obviously carry it out as you improve in your seniority. But for me, that wasn't really the thing that I found most enjoyment from. It was the people side of things. So that's that kind of led me towards the general practice, and I think the broad nature of that was perhaps what allowed me to go down that route rather than say a medical specialty, and because it allows you to do lots of different things with it, but also every day is a little bit different. So rather than being in a clinic and subspecializing and seeing the same group of problems, what it means is that as I say, every person that walks through the door could be that day could be presenting with something different, and that's a fun challenge, and that makes the day for me more enjoyable.
Mm. And so, at what point then, once you've graduated, so once you've finished, you finished your medicine degree, like at what point can you go into being a GP?
So the way it worked previously, and I think it still does, although I could be wrong because I'm not actively involved in educating GPs at the moment. But they used to do foundation training where you would do the first couple of years within a hospital. And then from there, you then pick what you wish to subspecialize in. So you tend to go down one of I think it's 4 routes. So either a medical specialty, a surgical specialty where you do your core training in those. There's an emergency medicine stroke anaesthetics specialty, and then the 4th route tends to be GP. So it would be, in my case, it was 2 years of foundation training, then 3 years of GP training.
Right. And so you technically working at that point?
You are, yeah, absolutely, yeah. So that's after the 5-year degree, or 6-year, depending on whether you intercalate. I was very lucky in terms of my degree gave me lots of different opportunities. I got to spend time in Italy on the Erasmus exchange program. Had some fantastic experiences there. But then from the completion of the 5 years, then you are fixed within that hospital, and that's when you do rotation, because the foundation training means that you are by nature having an experience of all the different specialties, because at that stage you might have an idea in your head as to what you want to do, but actually the reality of it on the ground is a little bit different to perhaps you expected. And again, a lot of people change there, and the other point that people tend to, I suppose, reevaluate is that gap between the foundation training and the core or GP training, where people tend to use that as an opportunity to have time out of the program, potentially have an F3 year now, go to places like Australia or different areas where they can experience medicine in a different healthcare setting, and I think that's a really valuable experience for some people as well.
Mm. Yeah, I always regret not doing Erasmus. Whereabouts in Italy were you?
So I was based in Pavia, which is about an hour from Milan. So yeah, absolutely great experience. Very happy memories there. The way it worked out, I actually got to spend time there with my now wife as well, who was also on the exchange program. So we were able to live together there. We had a lot of opportunities at the weekends to be able to go off to various different cities, enjoy the cuisine, learn a little bit of the language. We used that opportunity to do marathon training as well. So we ran the Rome Marathon while we were there. So it was a fantastic time of our lives.
Yeah, I can imagine. So how does that work then from the language perspective?
Well, I must say, I very rarely run into anyone Italian these days, so I don't practice it as perhaps as often as I should. But the way that it works, you are supposed to have some language background. Obviously, in England, there aren't many people who do Italian. Most schools tend to teach either French, German, or Spanish. So I had done a little bit of French, so I had an AS level in French. So I guess because it's a Latin language, there is quite a few similarities within that. And I think that's what I guess set me apart from people who perhaps hadn't done any languages or hadn't done languages past GCSE, and that's why I was afforded the opportunity. But it did mean there was a little bit of a panic of trying to learn enough Italian to get by, and it involved a lot of patience from some of my mentors. And the British thing, unfortunately, is that we are typically rubbish at languages, and that everyone else in the world is much better than we are, and then generally speaks much better English. And thankfully, that was the case. Although I clearly wanted to add a little bit of value to their experience. We actually ended up living with a family at one point over there, and part of that was that our friend from the hospital, he was actually an infectious disease consultant who I've been talking to about living arrangements. He said, just come and live with us. Really fantastic man named Antonello, who brought us in. Actually attended our wedding in the years that followed. But he had teenage children at that time. So again, he felt that it'd be a great opportunity for them to learn a little bit more English as well, and expose themselves to that. So yeah, very happy times, and took a lot out of it. Even though, as I say, I'm a bit ashamed that my Italian isn't as good as it could be now.
Yeah, no, it sounds an amazing experience. I think it's always great to go and live abroad at some point. So when you were back, you'd done your time at the hospital, and so going into, how do you find a GP practice of where you're going to work?
The way that the GP training works is that you still do blocks within the hospital to make sure that you are covering all the things that you would need to do with GP. But then you start to have more time actually in general practice itself. That nowadays is drip fed in through the training at university, more so, and then also in foundation years for some people. But the exposure and the amount of time that's there increases obviously as you go through the program. And then it's like most things, it's trying to find a good cultural fit for yourself. All GP businesses, although under the wider NHS umbrella, they are essentially businesses that are run by the partners. So it's a case of trying to find where your values most align, and there's a definite spectrum of some would be looking more to where they can have that ability to generate more income from that. There are those at the other end that would rather actually generate less income, but be able to spend more time at home, I guess, and have a slightly less demanding work schedule. And then I guess the reality is that most are probably somewhere in the middle. In relation to that as well.
How do you find that out then? Because I think it is a really interesting thing about culture, and I agree it's massively important. Even though you're doing the same role, arguably, it's culture's a big deciding factor.
Yeah, I think you only really know that when you are embedded within somewhere. And I think it works the same way really in most general practices as it would in sports teams, in that if you are looking for something like a GP partnership, you're probably doing some kind of probationary type 6-month period where you're in there. You might be working a salary position with a view to partnership if you feel that actually, yes, that works for you, and that's where you want to base yourself. And if you feel that your way of working and everyone else's way of working is a way that is cohesive and fits nicely, then that's probably the place for you. I've done that before, where I've been in a place where I was a partner earlier in my career, coming straight out of the training program, very much a modern practice, all bells and whistles, but the way that things went behind the scenes, it wasn't for me anymore. I didn't have a great work-life balance at that place, so I felt that I would have a better time, a better balance by moving on to a different practice, and that's exactly what I did. And I think I've been at my current one for maybe 7 or more years at this stage.
And that's been better from the cultural perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things that when you've experienced a culture that actually you found wasn't to your liking, then when you do find somewhere that does fit, you think, oh yeah, this is it. This is what it should have felt like.
Yeah,
it's like a nice warm hug, proverbially. And when you've kind of found your place, and when people are on the same level as you are.
Yeah, no, definitely important. So at what point did you decide you wanted to do the masters?
The masters, it's an interesting one. So when I was started GP training, that was when I started to dabble a little bit into the sports side of things. I was someone who never thought about working in sport. It wasn't on my radar at all going through university, thinking, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that. You remember like looking on telly, don't you, when you watch an international event, a football fixture, a rugby fixture, whatever it might be, and you think, oh, that looks a cool, in inverted commas, job, but it wasn't something that I thought, oh, I'd love to do that. I simply there's perhaps an element of, well, there's only so many of these things out there. So it wasn't anything that I gravitated towards. It was only when I got the opportunity to start working within rugby league, and that purely came about because a doctor who was working for a company called Bucket and Sponge, his name is Dr John Morgan, actually advertised and said, is there any trainees that want to come and be involved in the service that we had, which at the time was providing medical support to various rugby league teams across the area. Obviously, in the Northwest, rugby league is very big, and there's lots of teams about, lots of cover required. So that was great, and it allowed me to organically improve my skills. So that the first fixture that I ever covered, vividly remember, was an under-23 game for Rochdale Hornets, somewhere over in near Rochdale. I have no idea where to this day. I don't think I've ever been there since. But just that, a random pitch. You've got all the gear because it's mandated, obviously. But then it progressed into that to then been able to cover games in Super League and Challenge Cup semi-finals as you progress your skills, and I guess as you've done more, then you have that confidence. And John Morgan was fantastic in that he trusted me and my ability to be able to take on those challenges even at that relatively young stage in my career. So by the time I actually did the Masters, which was actually after I'd finished my GP training, and I'd already been working in sport for 2-3 years by that point. I did actually want to do it sooner, but my GP training program director said that he didn't feel that was appropriate, which you can extrapolate from that I clearly wasn't what I agreed with. But I would have had to essentially use all my holidays and things like that to do the residential camps. And again, when you've got kids, etc., you don't particularly, and it would have been a tough sell to my wife to say, oh, by the way, I'm going to spend all my holidays doing an MSc. So we agreed to defer it. Right.
Yeah. And so what was it like doing the course?
I mean, I did the course at Bath, which is distance learning. Really enjoyed my time there, particularly the residential weeks when you get to go along, see the facilities, meet the highly experienced tutors that were there, and obviously meet your peers as well, and fantastic for networking. There's so many people there that whenever I'm at an event now, SEM type event, I'll frequently bump into these people and say hello. So
who were some of those tutors then, Eddie?
The course was led by Stuart Miller at the time, who was the head of GB Paralympics. We had the now sadly departed Julian Widowson as well, who was really fantastic and gave a lot of his time to freely tutor a small group of us. So it played a very significant part in enabling me to get through that course and progress.
Yeah, that's impressive setup, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I also wanted to say about Sean Cumming, who was my supervisor of my MSc project as well, on biobanding and academy footballers. So it was it is and was a really interesting area, and I think you've probably seen in the space in between now and maybe 5 or so years ago when I did that, there's more and more of these things with biobanding cropping up.
Yeah, to talk to me a bit more about biobanding.
Yeah, so biobanding, for those that don't know, is when it's really trying to correct against the benefits that early maturers would get in sport. So what you can have is that you could have two that are in the same school year or age group, if you like, and they can be very different in terms of their maturational status. So one could be essentially, say you take a 15-year-old, one of them could have pretty much reached their near adult height and stature at that stage. Whereas someone at 15, maybe in the very early stages of puberty still, and there's perhaps an understanding that if you are that one who has been compared against a fully matured a young adult of the same age, then it would potentially look to a coach watching on that actually this player isn't as good, in inverted commas, and you may well see that group then drop out of academies. And that's certainly true when you look at players going out of academies. I think lots of examples out there, but famously Harry Kane was at Arsenal and then decided no, that they didn't want him, and I guess the rest is history. So there are other, I'm sure there are many other examples out there. I think Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain was one as well that actually was played a year down at Southampton, because again his stature meant that at that stage that if you were comparing him to people his own age, then it maybe wasn't that useful, because they would have those physical talents that it's that ability that as well to, when you bioband, is because you're matching for that, you develop different things. So the ones that are at the other end of the maturational spectrum, so if they're very big, very strong, very tall potentially, they can use their physical assets to I guess improve, to I suppose bully opponents, if you will, but then when everyone else catches up, if that's all they've been doing for the last X amount of years, then they suddenly don't have the technical ability to keep up. So again, putting them in a higher group enables them to work on the other aspect of the skills too. And similarly, that those players that are maturing later, rather than having to not get anywhere near the ball potentially because they've been shoved off it by your bigger, your stronger opponent, they can continue to work on their skills progression. But I think the understanding with biobanding now is that it perhaps having a little bit of those two works, because actually learning to compensate and play against bigger opponents is still valuable as well. Lionel Messi clearly isn't the biggest person in the world, but he's still widely acknowledged as one of, if not the best footballer of all time. So I think that clearly size isn't everything, and so there is still some benefit in playing against and challenging yourself against those perhaps bigger players. And so having both, and that's where the biobanding tournaments that they run now come in. So you can still have your squad, if you like, and play within that, but then actually play biobanded games, fixtures, training sessions as well.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting, isn't it? Because you do think it seems like that England in particular have improved a lot on that, because it was always very physical. And like I'm an Everton fan, so I remember Rooney coming through, and he obviously adds everything from physicality as well as the technical ability as well. But you can see that the bigger players just tend to dominate games, and it's a bit of a challenge. But then also, like I saw Mark Weller did a post recently where he was talking about that kids are so football centric now, and they're not doing the basic gymnastics or where a lot of the physio came from, wasn't it? It was from that sort of that gymnastics background of how they develop things. So what are your thoughts on that in terms of people being, say, solely exposed to football from a very young age without doing this general play?
No, absolutely. I think that's a really key area, and I know a lot of academies try and incorporate that in terms of your different physical biomechanical movements are all really important. As much as anything, I think there's an element of the love for the game as well, that you don't want to burn out suddenly when you're 12 because you've been playing football 5 times a week. That's obviously not going to happen to everyone, because some of those people probably do go on to be the best footballers. But ultimately, we know the numbers are very small of the ones that are going to make it to to the very top. So having that wider spectrum of techniques of movement patterning, I think is really important, because you may find that actually that you want to go into into other sports. I mean, I speak with I guess 3 different hats on that, as a doctor involved in sport and exercise medicine, but also as a father and as a football coach, because I coach one of my my kids' teams. So we're always trying to look at where we can bring in these other elements to it, and I think that's a big part of what we try and do. And ultimately, it's about making it fun rather than doing drills and drills and drills.
Yeah, no, it is an interesting area. So, and then in terms of like for you, we're talking about the opportunities for someone who are in the GP space and sports doc. It's quite a growing area of the SEM world. Like, how do you find that from with your qualifications? For what does that enable you to do?
Yeah, it depends on enable. I guess it depends on what setting that you work in. There's obviously a lot of regulation, as a lot of the physios are aware, around like CQC and how you can get that set up and what that allows you to do. Within GP practice, I guess within reason, as long as you have the capability and where necessary qualification for it, there's nothing stopping you doing some of the fancy procedures. If I wanted to get an ultrasound machine, there'd be no reason why I couldn't do that. But then it's not necessarily the best value for those patients and for the health economy for my time to be spent within that. So that's probably better within a musculoskeletal clinic, and I think that's where the NHS is somewhat going in that direction with these, but it's a little bit fragmented with lots of different private providers at the moment, and the pathways into orthopedic services as well are there and are improving all the time. But I still don't think it's as joined up as it could be, and I think that there perhaps is more of a role for people like myself who've got the GP background, but also the additional training in sport and musculoskeletal medicine, to be able to help in that gatekeeper role, and also to hopefully provide some of those interventions as well, so we can avoid onward referrals into a more secondary care, and I guess from an NHS point of view, expensive setting.
Yeah, no, it is interesting. So we're running our ultrasound courses, and we get quite a mix of whether it's SEMs, physios. Then we've had a couple of GPs that come through. So is a standard, like you mentioned, ultrasound. Like, how often is ultrasound used within a GP setting from an MSK perspective?
Well, I would say it's not unless you've got unless you're set up as an MSK clinic. So if you're in an environment where via your PCN or your what used to be CCGs, so integrated neighbourhood teams now, that you've procured a service arrangement, then that's probably where you would have a ultrasound in clinic. I spent some time working with Nigel Jones at the musculoskeletal service there at Ormskirk and Southport, and that was set up fantastically within the hospital with teams of physios, with ultrasound, with the ability to do interventions such as injection. I was a little bit green at ultrasound at that stage, since done my qualifications in that. So I wasn't using it hugely, but that was the setting in which I think that you could do that. So it wasn't that the orthopedic referral, if you like, and it wasn't the GP. It was that halfway house musculoskeletal service that I think there's definitely a lot of value to that. And I think even more so now, because we've got, certainly in my practice, we've got the first contact physios that are improving that first, obviously the first contact as part of that, and are better able to signpost onto these kinds of places.
Yeah, the FCP role is interesting, isn't it? That seems to be real expanding territory. So how do you interact with those?
So in our practice, we have 2 FCPs who are fantastic. Our surgery works on a triage model. So if someone essentially completes their triage information and says, I've got an X joint problem, then whatever that might be, then we would generally triage them to the physio, who would assess them usually on a face-to-face basis, and arrange any initial investigations that need to occur, provide the starter advice and a program where necessary. And then they can refine that into an onward referral to either a physio self-referral, where they can have follow-up, because obviously first contact physio isn't meant for that follow-up, it's meant for that initial presentation. Then they've got the option of referring on to musculoskeletal team, and at the other end there's also a direct referral to orthopedics if it's deemed necessary. But we can also get involved with those patients as well. So if they come along and said, actually, I just wanted a prescription for a stronger painkiller, then obviously we can sort that out as well. And we try and collaborate on that, so it's not needing two different appointments, for instance.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting space because everything is changing. Certainly on the MSK side, there's a big melting pot of what's going on. So it will be interesting to go. So in terms of other things that you do, then what other work are you doing alongside your GP work?
So at the moment, I'm a medical performance support officer for, I think that's my title, for PGMOL, which is the body for the professional match officials in England. The ones working in the Premier League, Championship, WSL. So we have regular camps at a couple of venues where they will meet up to have education primarily, but as part of that there's often physical testing, physical sessions, and obviously we have medical provision there as well to enable them to remain on the pitch and obviously performing at the best of their abilities there.
Yeah, no, and I saw a piece that you'd done around imaging for within women's football. So it's interesting to see the WSL is really flying at the moment.
No, absolutely, and I think that the Lionesses obviously had a huge part of that in their successes over the last few years, but it has been it has been growing for some time. I'm no longer working in women's football, but when I started, it was about 5.5 years ago, I think 2018. The landscape was just completely different to it is now. That's both in terms of the exposure, the I suppose accessibility of the product, the facilities that we had, probably to some extent the quality of the players as well, in terms of the way that they've got access to those facilities. They've got access to better coaching, better funding, better recovery, and obviously that's then allowed players from elsewhere in the world to come in and enhance that further. So it continues to be a very, very exciting time within the women's football sphere, and I'm delighted to see it going from strength to strength.
Yeah, no, definitely. And then for you, then, what do you see as being the important non-clinical skills to be a good doctor?
Listening, I think, is really, really key. It sounds very simple, but it can be a little bit harder to do. And by that I mean, going into an environment, it's easy to go in there with what you've learned before and what you think you know, and try and apply it to somewhere. But like we said before, all environments, whether that be in sport or clinical environments, are a little bit different. And I think that having that understanding of actually where this environment is at any given time, allowing yourself to embed within that and share your perspective with making it relatable to their situation at the time is really, really key. So typically for me, it might be that I would come across almost too quiet going into an environment for the first time, because I would like to really survey how it works and be a little bit of a fly on the wall before saying that we need to do that, we need to do this, because you don't really know where your priorities are until you're actually embedded within that situation. And obviously priorities will be different depending on what you find as part of that exercise. And then certainly forward there are clearly all the key skills within that. I'm very open. I like to think and try and be very approachable for all players. I think that part of that is that you have to have quite an odd relationship, if you will, when you're a team physician to players, in that you want them to be able to come to you about anything that might be on their mind, whether that be a mental health issue, that could be a worry about an injury, that could be a sexual health issue. There are a plethora of things that could be on their mind, and the ability to be approachable. So hopefully you want to be pleasant, you want to be I think the word friend is always quite difficult in that scenario, because you certainly want to be friendly, but you want to have that trust in you that when they come to you, they can freely speak their mind, and that they know that you're going to be taking whatever they're telling you seriously, and acting upon that.
Yeah, no, definitely good points. And so what would your advice be for people that are looking to get into the world of medicine or sports medicine or healthcare?
So I think that it's really rewarding. Firstly, I don't think there's any job in the world that is perfect. But from a medicine side, I would say definitely go for it, on the basis that there are so many things that you can do with that. Like we said, that we've had a lengthy discussion earlier about the clinical aspects that you can do with it, but there are all the time there are new things coming up. Obviously, there's a lot of AI things out there recently, and I think that will only continue to grow. There are businesses within that. There are acquisitions that, and either way, having a solid degree never hurt anyone either. So I think that they are, it's a really transferable skill set that you'll gain through medicine. And from the sports side, again, I think you need to love it. Much like we said earlier about surgeons loving surgery, I think if you want to be a sports medic, you have to love being in that team environment. And I think that if you do that and you commit to that, then yeah, you won't go far wrong.
Yeah, you mentioned AI as well. Like, what do you see as the development of AI within healthcare?
Yeah, it's a really tricky one, isn't it? In the sense of that we see that and I guess on a day-to-day basis, everyone's sort of seen all the ChatGPT and things that are pretty good, but not infallible. And I guess that's similar to the flesh and bones clinicians, if you will. But like we said a minute ago about the player that wants to tell you something, it maybe isn't about necessarily having all the answers. It's been able to get that information out of somebody in the first place. So that's where the clinician element, I think, will always be there. But AI, I think, is a useful addition to that. And I think there are lots of things in there that it can improve. I think imaging is perhaps part of that as well. There are lots of things coming out that I'm seeing around how it can support on the interpretation and potentially reporting of imaging. Again, I don't think that's going to replace radiologists, but it can certainly be helpful. Make sure that there are things that are perhaps missed less frequently, and I think that's probably across all spheres in medicine.
Yeah, and I've seen Shub Basu, who's a good friend and a radiologist in that area, and he's very active in promotion of AI and trying to understand what's going on with it. So no, it's a fascinating space. I mean, yeah, ChatGPT is mental, and like going on workshops on that all the time. It's like, this is crazy what you can do. But no, Eddie, really appreciate your time on this. Thanks for sharing your insight, and it's good to get the perspective of your different backgrounds. And yeah, it's been really good. So thank you for your time.
No problem at all. Thank you for having me.
Cheers, Eddie. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Take care, Andy. Goodbye.